speak at Kent State University because, you know, during my martial art career, I won the world title in 1968 and retired in 1974. That was a couple of years before you were born, I believe. And then my Walker, Texas Ranger was, you know, it amazed me because we wrapped that show 7 years ago, and many of you were still in middle school at that time. So, so it, you know, but anyway, it's really an honor, and probably a lot of it has to do with these Chuck Norris facts, I think, that's been going around for a couple of years. But first of all, I would kind of like to give you a background on my life, to kind of explain to you the struggles and the trials and tribulations that I had to go through to achieve the successes in my life. And then after that, we can do a Q&A if you like. Is that what would you like to do a Q&A?
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, you know, I grew up in Oklahoma. I grew up with a mom who had to play the role of both father and mother. My dad was an alcoholic and was a philanderer and was gone all the time, and so my mom had to play the role of both. And not having a male role model in my life, you know, I didn't get the things I needed as a boy, and because of that, I grew up very shy and introverted and non-athletic. You know, I tried to play sports, but I was so shy that I couldn't go up to the coach and say, "Coach, put me in there, I can do it." I was just too shy to do that, so I didn't really play that much in sports. And then, when I graduated from high school, I joined the military, and I was sent to Korea. And that's my first introduction to the martial arts. Now, this is in 1960.
Wow.
Now, if you're wondering how old that is, I'm 39 with 29 years experience. Which means 68. But while I was in, anyway, when I was in Korea, the only thing I'd ever heard of martial art-wise was judo. You know, 1960, no one ever heard of karate or anything like that. So I enrolled in a judo class at Osan Air Base in Korea. And 2 weeks into my training, I broke my shoulder in what they call an Ippon Seonage, if you know anything about judo. That's a shoulder throw. And so now I got my arm in a sling, can't train. And so one day I'm walking out into the village of Osan. And as I'm walking through the village, I see these heads up on this knoll popping up, going up and down. I go, what the heck is going on up there? So I walk up on the hill there and I look down and I see these Koreans up there doing these incredible jumping spinning kicks. And I go, holy mackerel, I didn't think the human body could do something like that. And I wanted to go down and ask them what it was they were doing, but they looked mean, you know, and I thought, oh, I don't know. They looked off. So I thought, well, I'll go back and ask my judo instructor. So I went back to the base and asked Mr. On. I said, what is it they're doing out in the village there with all this stuff? And so he explained to me. At that time, this was 1960, it was called Tang Soo Do. Today it's called Taekwondo. And I said, I would like to take that since I can't, you know, train in judo. Maybe I can train with my one arm out there doing the things they're doing. So he took me out, introduced me to Master Lee. I don't know if any of you were involved in martial arts or ATA, if you know anything about ATA, but this was that was Master Lee that taught me there in Osan. And anyway, I started training in the martial arts. And so I trained Monday through Saturday from 5 to 10 at night in Tang Soo Do. And then I trained in judo on Sundays from 12 to 4. So when I left Korea, I was a black belt in Tang Soo Do and a brown belt in judo. I have to explain, all the way through school, I never once got in front of a class and gave a book report or anything. I was just too shy to get up in front of a class. And so when the teachers say, you know, get up here and talk, I just shake my head no, because I was afraid I'd be embarrassed. So of course my face is turning beet red anyway, sitting at my desk, but I just didn't have the courage to do it. And when I came back from Korea, I still had that, you know, I was still introverted. And I'd never gotten in front of anyone and talked before. So I get a March Air Force Base in Riverside, California. And I was working out, and a lot of the people on the base saw me working out, and they didn't know what it was I was doing. They said, well, you know, will you teach us some of that stuff? So I thought, well, maybe I'll put a demonstration on here at the base and maybe start a club at the March Up for Space. So I thought, okay, if I'm going to give a demonstration, that means I got to do an opening address to the people. So I write out about a half-a-page speech. And for 2 weeks, I'm memorizing this speech. And I could say it forwards, backwards, sideways. Now, this was 1962, and I can still remember it vividly. I get and walk into the gymnasium. There's like 500 people in there. And the microphone's laying on the floor. So I walk down, I pick up the microphone, and I say, "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Chuck Norris, and I'd like to welcome you here." That's the last thing I remember. The next thing I remember, I'm laying the microphone down and walking out to the middle of the gym. And as I'm walking out there, I'm thinking, did I finish my speech? Or did I just lay the microphone down? Well, to this day, I don't know. But the key point here I'm trying to make is I finally cracked that egg of insecurity that I had carried around for 21 years. And then I kept forcing myself to keep doing that until that egg finally cracked open, and I overcame that inhibition of being able to get in front of people and talking. And then I got out of the military, and I opened my first school in California. And no one knew what it was. They didn't know what this martial art was in 1962. And so they'd come by, and I remember my school was on a place called 5 Points. There's 5 intersections that crossed in that one section where my school, my school was full bay windows, so you could see inside the school of us working out. And I'd say once a week, I'd hear crash, somebody had run into somebody in the intersection there looking at us working out in there. But I thought, well, how am I going to get students in my school? And I thought, well, maybe I'll become a competitor. I'll become a fighter. And if I could win a local tournament in Los Angeles, maybe I could get a write-up in Black Belt magazine and maybe in the local paper and help me get students. Because my whole goal was teaching. I thought that was going to be my life endeavor. And so my first tournament in 1964 is in Salt Lake City, Utah. So I take 3 of my students and myself, and we drive 16 hours to Salt Lake City in my old car, barely made it. And we all 4 fight. My 3 students win, and I lose. So I drove back while they held their trophies. But on the way back, I'm thinking, how did I lose? And what was the mistakes I made? And and funny how philosophies develop through experiences. I said, okay, I may lose again, but I'll never lose the same way twice. And that was always been my philosophy in life. I may fail, but I will not fail the same way. And then finally, I won the what they call the LA Stars tournament in Los Angeles, California. Now that was my goal, to win that tournament. I won it, and then I started thinking, well, if I can win the LA tournament, why not the California state? So in 1965, I fought for the state title, and I won it. I thought, well, if I can win the state title, why not the national title? So I went to New York, fought for the national title, and I won it. So I go, well, if I can win the national title, why not the biggest amateur tournament in the world, the International, in Long Beach, California? And fighters come from all over the world to fight in this. So in 1967, I fought for the international title, and I won it. Woo! And now I was going to, retire and concentrate on my schools. And the promoter of the internationals, Ed Parker, says, "Mr. Norris, if you win this tournament 2 years in a row, we put your name in this big silver bowl." I go, oh man, I gotta get my name in that bowl. Anyway, so I fought in 1968, and I repeated, I won the title again. So then I retired again. Then I get a call from a promoter in New York, and he says, Chuck, have you ever thought about fighting professionally for the middleweight title, for the world middleweight title? And I said, no. And he said, well, you know, we'd like for you to fight the champion, a Puerto Rican kid named Luis Delgado, for the world title. And so I thought about it. I thought, why not? So I came out of retirement again, like the third time, and I went to New York and I fought for the world middleweight title and I won it. And I held it until 1964. And then this time, of course, my schools are doing very well, flourishing. And anyway, I had some promoters come to me. They said, Chuck, why don't you sell us your schools, and we'll open 1,000 Chuck Norris schools all over the country. I go, wow, 1,000 schools. I said, okay, so I sell my schools. 2 years later, we're broke. Now I have no schools. And now I'm thinking, well, what am I going to do? I have no schools, and I thought my whole life would be teaching. And so now I start teaching private students. Priscilla Presley, Bob Barker was one of my students for 7 years. Steve McQueen. And so Steve is the one that said, Chuck, what are you going to do now that you don't have schools anymore? I said, I don't know, I really don't know, Steve. I'm kind of thinking it through right now. And he says, well, have you ever thought about acting? And I break out laughing. I said, Steve, I've never done a high school play, you know. I couldn't get in front of a class until I was 21 years old. And I said, but I'm curious. What makes you think I could be an actor? He says, I don't know. He says, you know, maybe you can, maybe you can't. Only the camera can determine that. But he says, I would encourage you to give it a try. So I thought about it, because kind of my philosophy back in those days, once, you know, through my martial art training, is that once I set a goal, I'm going to succeed at it by hook or crook. I'm not going to give up. So I knew, now I'm 35 years old, 34 years old. And I thought, you know, I better check this acting thing out, because I don't know anything about it. So I started checking, you know, acting out, and I found out there's 16,000 unemployed actors in Hollywood. The average income a year for an actor is $3,000 a year. And I'm thinking, man, this is a big challenge here, you know. And but anyway, after about 4 months of thinking about it, I thought, I'm going to go for it. So I called up acting schools, because I've never had an acting class in my life. So I called up acting schools to see about taking acting classes. So in the acting classes, they're run like $700 a month. Well, I'm teaching private students, but I got a family I have to support, and I don't have the money. And I thought, oh man, what am I going to do? So I started checking around. I found a school that would take me on my GI Bill. So I actually took acting on my GI Bill. But anyway, after about 4 months of acting class, I have to take my very first class. You go into acting class, they give you a little script, and you do a scene with a partner. So anyway, you go in the back and you rehearse it, and you come out and do it in front of the class. So I go back there and I practice the scene with this woman, and we go out and we do the scene. My acting coach says, Chuck, for a martial arts champion, you're the stiffest guy I've ever seen in my life. I said, you've never seen anyone more scared in your life either than me right now. And but it was tough going. It really was tough because by nature I'm inhibited. I'm not an outgoing person by nature. I've learned to do it, because to be successful in life, you must be able to assert yourself in this world. And I had to learn to do that, but it wasn't easy. And then I thought, okay, after about 4 months of taking classes, I thought, I gotta get a job. So anyway, I find a friend through my martial arts who said, look, I'll try to set you up some auditions, for a part. So he calls me and says, I got an audition for you for that part. It's a real small part in a movie, if you want to go down and try out for it. I said, okay. So I'll go down there, and there's like 100 guys there trying out for the same part. And I'm looking around, and I see guys I know on television, and I'm going, oh man, I wonder if I can get his autograph. and this guy's trying out for the same part I'm trying out for. I said, this is not going to work. So I go back and I said, what am I going to do? You know, how am I going to break into this business? I know I'm not going to be a Laurence Olivier or a Dustin Hoffman or anything like that. So what is it I'm going to try to project on the screen? And I thought, well, you know, the thing is, why not my martial arts ability? You know, and in the 70s, you know, all the movies were more anti-heroic type movies. You know, Bruce Lee had died, and so now those movies are now being made in Hollywood or anywhere else. And so I said, well, if I can do a movie like that, maybe they'll tolerate my horrible acting, you know. So anyway, I thought, well, so anyway, I decided to write my own screenplay. So I write a screenplay called Good Guys Wear Black. And now I'm taking this thing around Hollywood. And I set up an appointment with the producer. Well, the producer, he had no intention of doing it. He just wanted to see what a world champion looked like. That's the only reason he was letting me in there. So anyway, I'd go in and I'd say, here's a script I'd like to do, and I want to star in it. And so anyway, he would give me 5 or 10 minutes, and then he'd move me on. Well, this went on for 4 years. And finally, I exhausted every producer that would see me in Hollywood. And now I'm at my wit's end. I'm thinking, what am I going to do, you know? And I said, you know, I hate failing. I hate failing. And so I'm at my best friend's machine shop in Gardena, California. I said, Larry, I said, I don't know what to do. I said, I've exhausted every producer in Hollywood, and none of them, you know, they just gave me a song and dance. And I said, I've exhausted. I said, I really don't know where to turn right now. He says, well, have you seen our accountant? We both have the same accountant. He said, our accountant has a producer. I said, he does? He said, yeah. I says, how old is he? So I think he's like 28. I said, oh man, Larry, I've gone through those guys, you know. These are wannabes. He said, well, why don't we call him up anyway? He said, I'm gonna call him. And so Larry does, he gets on the phone, calls the producer's office, Alan Badeau, and he gets the secretary, he says, my friend has a script I want your boss to see. She says, well, send it in, and when he gets around to it, maybe he can read it. And Larry said, oh no, I know how that works. He said, I want your boss to meet my friend, and then we'll give him the script. She says, well, I don't think that's going to happen. And Larry said, well, ask him if he knows who Chuck Norris, the world karate champion, is. So, as fate would have it, he knew who I was, and because he lived up in the same area that I did. And so he agreed to have dinner. So we go, I take him and his wife, and Larry and I go out and have dinner with them. And there's a Mexican restaurant in LA, and I said, Alan, I'll buy. And so after dinner, I get the check. I don't have enough money. I says, Larry, do you have to go to the bathroom? So Larry and I go to the bathroom. I says, do you have any money? And so he pulls out the money, and he says, here's. And so anyway, we had just enough with a $1 tip to pay for the check. Anyway, so we pay, and we go back home. And Alan was a great guy. We really got along. So we get back to my house. I said, well, Alan, here's the script. And, you know, when you get a chance, read it and see what you think. So this is about midnight. So anyway, I go to bed. 4 o'clock, 4 hours later, Alan calls me out of my sleep and says, Chuck, I like this script. He said, I'm going to see if I can raise the money for you to do it. So now I can't go back to sleep. Now I'm so excited I can't stand it. And so anyway, about a week goes by, and his investors were from local areas. They were lawyers and doctors, and that's where he got his money from, professionals in his area. So anyway, about a week he calls. He says, Chuck, they don't know who you are, and they don't want to gamble $1 million on an unknown. I said, well, Alan, can I talk to them? It's like 10 of them. I said, can I talk to them? And he says, okay, I'll set up a meeting for you to, talk to them. So I'm thinking, now, what am I going to say, to convince these people to gamble $1 million on me? And so I go to bed that night with this thought in my mind, what am I going to say? And it's the next morning at 11. And I go to bed and I'm thinking, what am I going to say to them, to convince them to gamble? And about 2 o'clock in the morning, I wake up with the answer. It's funny how your subconscious mind will start working when you're sleeping, right? And now I meet with these people, and I say to them, I say, I know you don't know who I am. But there's like 6 million people, 6 million martial artists in America who do know who I am. And they can no longer see me fight since I'm retired. The only way they can see me perform now is on the screen. Now, if only half of them come to the movie, that's a $6 million gross on $1 million investment, you're going to get your money back. So they did. They put up the money. And God had a lot to play in this, believe me. Believe me. And so anyway, we do Good Guys Wear Black. Now the producer cannot find a studio to release it. None of the studios in Hollywood and LA want this film. And so I said, well, Alan, what are you going to do? Nobody will take our film. He said, I'm going to borrow the money and we're going to four-wall it. Now, four-walling in those days meant you rent the theater, and then they say they charge you $3,000 a week to rent the theater, and anything over $3,000 you get to keep. They don't do that anymore, but that was what they did back in the 70s. And so sure enough, he formed his own distribution company, and he got 16 prints of Walker, Texas Ranger, and we started going around the country. Small towns like El Paso and San Antonio and the little towns throughout the country, and I would go and I'd give demonstrations at the high schools, the middle schools. I couldn't get any TV or radio, maybe a local radio station or maybe a local TV station, but that was all I would be able to get. So mainly just going to and doing my demonstrations around these small towns, from town to town. And Good Guys Wear Black was doing really good. The big thing in that movie is I do a flying sidekick through the front shield of the window and kill a terrorist. So that was the selling point of the whole movie. My acting was horrible, but that kick was really good. But anyway, the movie did $28 million. And so it was, now what we're doing, going to little towns, now we're going to the bigger towns. Akron, Cleveland, Dallas, the bigger cities. And I get a call, and Alan said, let's do another movie. And I said, okay. He says, do you have any ideas? I said, no. He said, well, come up with something. So I thought, well, why not me as a fighter? Do a movie as me as a professional fighter. So I wrote a screenplay called Force of One, where I played a professional fighter. And so I go back home, I do the movie. No one wants that one either. So now, Force of One starts going to the same towns that Good Guys started in, and now Good Guys in the bigger towns. So now back on the campaign trail of promoting the movies, I fly to Cleveland. I say, now what movie am I promoting here? Oh yeah, Good Guys Wear Black. Or I fly to El Paso and say, well, now what movie? So I'm bouncing from the big cities to little cities, promoting both movies at the same time. But what I'm trying to say here, for the young people, is it takes that kind of determination, to really be able to succeed in life, because you're going to have a lot of obstacles in your way, a lot of bumps in the road. And you don't know which bump that's going to be the one that's the last bump in the road. And I could have given up way back then, saying I'm too old. I'm 37 years old. I have no experience in acting. So what makes me think I can be an actor? So if I'd have planted those negative thoughts in my mind, I would not have been able to succeed. But I didn't plant those. I've always kept a positive frame of mind, and I do that all my life anyway. And so anyway, through the success, then that movie did $32 million, and then of course my career was going. And then I wound up doing 23 movies. Then I was in Israel doing a film, and I got an offer. I got offered to do TV series a lot, but I didn't want to do those. But anyway, I get offered to do Walker, Texas Ranger. And I read it and I go, golly, if I'm going to do one, this is the one I want to do about Texas Rangers, And so I thought about it, and I decided that I would go to a series. It's a big gamble, Because remember, if you're an actor and then you move to TV and if it bombs, it's really hard to get back and up here. So I knew it was a big gamble, but in my heart I felt it was the direction I wanted to go. So I did it, and I wound up doing 8.5 years on Walker, 203 episodes, and you know, and CBS wanted me to go for 2 more years. But my wife, by the way, my wife's Gina. Gina, you want to stand up so we'll introduce everybody? But Gina, at that time, was pregnant with our twins now, our 7-year-old twins now. And I knew that it was time to hang it up and, you know, concentrate on being a father. Because when you're doing a series, you're working 16 hours a day, 6 days a week, so it dominates your life. And so I decided, you know, to be a father and all that, I want to be home and take care of Gina, and which I thank God I did, because she almost died twice on me during the pregnancy. So it was we had some real close times. But anyway, the key thing here, you know, for the young people that are in school, going to college and graduating soon, and going to be stepping out into the big world. You know, and there's going to be a lot of obstacles, especially right now, as we all know, we're in dire straits right now in our country. And it's going to take some strong leadership to turn us around. And I write about it every week in my article. I have a weekly article on WorldNet Daily and Human Events and Town Hall. And I write about it every week, the things that concern me. You know, as I say, I've been blessed. I'm successful financially, so I don't have to worry about that in my life. But I'm thinking, what about the people now that are working from paycheck to paycheck, the ones that are going into the field and trying to make a living? You know, what about me? And that's why I wrote this book. You know, that's why I wrote Belt Patriotism. And I dedicated it to the millennials. Because being on the campaign trail with Mike Huckabee, and and I'll tell you how I got, when I was watching the debates, you know, Mike Huckabee and Ron Paul got about that much time on the air.
Ron Paul!
And it irritated the heck out of me, because we couldn't find out what they stood for. And anyway, I get an email from 2 college students, twin brothers, in Oregon. And they said, would you take a look at Mike Huckabee? We're backing him. We have Huck's Army. And they said, we're backing Mike Huckabee, and would you please take a look at him and see what you think? So Gene and I went on his website. We started reading everything we could about Mike Huckabee. And I liked it. And I especially liked his fair tax concept. Because the more I read into the fair tax, I said, you know, this is the way it should be. Not the complicated mess right now that we have. You know, and so I start writing about Mike Huckabee in my weekly articles. And each week I'd say little things that I like his vision for America, what he stood for. I didn't know that much about Ron Paul. Because at that time, again, he was unknown too. And so I get a call from Mike Huckabee's group. He said, well, we see that you're backing Mike Huckabee. I said, yeah. He said, well, would you do a promo for him? I said, yeah, I'll be glad to do a promo for him. So he comes to we have a ranch in Texas, so I did he came there and we did this little promo. And after the promo, he's only 52 years old. And I thought, I wonder what kind of a guy he is. I wonder if he's a macho guy. I said, Mike, would you like to go out in the gym and work out a little bit? I just got to see what, you know. And so, okay, you know, he said, I do a lot of running. He said, I've lost 110 pounds, actually. And I said, really? So we went out there, and I put the gloves on him, and we did. And he was a stand-up guy. I thought, that's pretty cool. He's a kind of a stand-up guy there. But anyway, at that time, he only had a 2% rating. And then from that one little promo we did, he got 1.5 million hits on YouTube. So that kind of sparked it. And everyone was saying, well, you're the one that did it. I said, no. I'm not the one that did it. All I did was light a little spark for Mike. The thing is, if he didn't have a message that resonated with the people, that spark's going to go out. But the thing is, Mike had the message that resonated. And then as I'm promoting Mike, I started hearing Ron Paul. And I said, I like what he stands for too. Because Ron Paul never talked about fair tax on his, and when he ran for president, that was one of my passions, is the fair tax. And I'll tell you why. There are 66,498 pages in the IRS tax code. Now, who in the world knows what's in all those pages? Charlie Rangel doesn't know, because, again, probably the only ones that really do know are your high-priced tax accountants who go through there and start finding the loopholes for their rich clients. And I'll give you an example of that. In 2005, over 6,000 taxpayers making over $250,000 a year paid no taxes. Now, the thing is, that's not fair. That's not fair. And it's not fair to the people who are working every week and having to pay their fair share to government and having to compensate for the ones that are cheating. And that's why I got on the fair tax thing. Again, it's not hurting me. I've been blessed, and like I said, I've made it. But the thing is, when there's $13 trillion in offshore accounts that the super rich are hiding all their money, if we have a fair tax, they can bring that $13 trillion back into our economy and give our economy a boost. The 3 million manufacturing jobs that are being outsourced to other countries could come back into our country and give us a boost too. And I explain it in detail in the book, but these are the things that we've got to do to get this country back on its feet. And I believe that fair tax is a good way. That way you keep all your money. You get every dime, 100%. And then if you want to buy something, if you need it, you can buy it. If you want it, you see if you can afford to buy it. See, we've become a nation of want. If I want it, I'm going to buy it. No matter what, I don't care. I'll figure out a way down the road to pay it off. Well, we're in a bad situation right now because of that thinking. And so we have to think of need and not greed. And again, I don't ever have a script. I talk from the heart, and that's the only way I can talk. I can't talk from my. That's why I mumble a lot too. But anyway, basically, again, I just wanted the young people to know that I've faced a lot of trials and tribulations in my life, and I've overcome them through sheer determination. Because the thing is, like I said, I didn't have the skills as a fighter. I didn't have the skills as an actor. But the thing is, I found a way to make it work for me. And even though I wasn't the fastest, strongest, I thought, okay, I got to use my brain to be able to beat these fighters. Because I fought a lot of guys that are a lot better than me in many areas of their fighting skills. But I learned to be able to outthink them, and I used a lot what I call visualization. I fight top fighters, and what I would do is I'd actually visualize my fighting them before I fought, and I'd actually go through these matches with them in my mind. And the thing is that an actual experience and something vividly imagined is very minor. It's like, say you're walking down an alley and you see a door there and you're thinking, oh man, is there someone behind that door? And your hair stands up on end, and then you go there, nope, nobody there, but you got the same reaction as if there would have been someone there, see? And so that's what I did. I used that mental visualization in my fighting, and it helped me win the events that I've won. But when you guys get out there, you're going to have to be facing a lot of your own challenges, and whatever your goal may be. But remember, that goal has got to be something you believe you can accomplish. If I'd have thought, Chuck, I'm going to be the world karate champion. If I'd have thought that in the beginning, it would have never have happened, because I couldn't even imagine myself winning a world title. But I took it step by step. That's something that I believed I could achieve. And once I achieved it, my goal increased. And that's what you're going to have to do in your lives too, is do the same thing. And believe me, if I can do it, believe me, anyone can do it. And but anyway, that's basically my life story. In 68, in a lump sum. Now we can have a Q&A if you have any questions about the facts or anything else. I have to say, these Chuck Norris facts have been a phenomenon to me. 3 years ago, I started reading these Chuck Norris facts. And Gina and I looking at them, I go, these things are funny. And I said, well, this will only last a couple of weeks, and then it'll fade out in a couple of weeks. Well, you college students, man, you gravitated to those facts, and all of a sudden it became a phenomenon within the college circuit, and then it drifted down to the high schools, then the middle schools, then it went all over the world. I was getting facts from Africa, and all of a sudden, now the troops in Iraq and Afghanistan have their own Chuck Norris facts. They call them Chuckisms. So anyway, they were bugging their commanders in Iraq to get me over there. And so General Neller in Iraq calls me up and says, Chuck, would you come over to Iraq? The troops are driving me crazy. And I said, well, I'd be more than happy to, General Neller, but I said, I'm not going to come over like a typical USO tour and step up on stage and just wave to the troops. I said, if I go over there, I want to be able to mingle with them, I want to be able to shake hands with them, I want to be able to take pictures with them, and that's the only way I'll do it. And I want to go to places, camps, where the celebrities don't go. I want to go down near the Syrian, near the Iranian border, where I know celebrities in the media don't even go to. If I can do that too, then I'll be happy to go. So they agreed. So I went over there in October of 2006, and I visited 11 camps. I shook hands and took pictures with over 17,000 troops. And then I went over again last September, and I went to 17 camps and took pictures with over 20,000. But I have to tell you that I was on the roof with the Navy SEALs and talking to them. And there was an import team with a scope on the roof there. I said, Chuck, you want to fire that? I said, can I? Oh yeah, go ahead, go over there and fire it. So I go over there and I put the scope to my eye and I fire. The thing bounces back and hits me right between the eyes, man. Now I got a U-shaped thing and blood is flowing down my face. And the guy said, oh, Chuck, we forgot to tell you, don't put your eye against the scope. I said, yeah, now you tell me, And then I go to an outdoor commode, and here's Chuck Norris facts on the walls of the commode. I think, man, I cannot get away from these things. Not even going to the bathroom, But I have to say, it was probably one of the most incredible experiences I've had. In 2006, when I went over there, I didn't see one Iraqi. I saw, the troops, and I took pictures, but I didn't see any Iraqis. And I was kind of questioning. I thought, wonder why. And then I went over last September, and I saw hundreds of Iraqi troops, soldiers. And I asked the commander, I said, well, how come I didn't see any last year? He said, because we didn't have any. He said the sheiks were holding them back, but they've gotten so fed up with Al-Qaeda that they are now sending their young men to join the army to chase the Al-Qaeda out of Iraq. And so there's a whole platoon of Iraqi soldiers there. And it says, Chuck, would you go over and meet these Iraqi soldiers? I said, Captain, they're not going to know who I am. I said, Saddam Hussein didn't show Chuck Norris movies over here in Iraq. I know that for sure. And so anyway, I go over there. Well, they knew who I was, man. Somehow or another, they got underground movies or something. But anyway, they're hugging me and kissing me and all that there. And one Iraqi officer, because none of them could speak English. And Iraqi officer says to my interpreter, starts talking. And he's talking, blah, 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 blah. I go, what the heck is he talking about? And the interpreter says, Chuck, he wants to know about that rat in Missing in Action. Was that a real rat you put in your mouth? I did a movie called Missing in Action, and where I was being tortured by the Viet Cong, and they hung me up on my feet, and the scene is they put a rat in the sack, and they tied it around my neck, my hands tied, and the rat attacks my face. So, and of course, and then when they take it off, I got the rat in my mouth. I killed the rat with my teeth. But the thing is, now we're shooting this in St. Kitts, Caribbean, up in the mountains there. And so we're getting ready to shoot this scene. And so I'm tying my feet. So I said, okay, where's the fake rat? Silence. Now we got all these mountain rats that we had in cages, to establish, the rats. And I said, well, don't tell me you didn't bring a fake rat for me to put in my mouth. They go, oh, well, I guess we'll have to cancel this scene. I said, you can't cancel this scene. It's an important scene in the movie. And they said, well, I don't know. This is record. I don't know what to do. I said, all right, well, kill that rat. So they killed the rat. So anyway, I put tape on the rat, see if I can put tape on it and stick it in my mouth. Tape comes off. So I'm trying all these different things. Nothing's working. Now my temper gets the best of me. I said, all right, get ready. I said, when I get up there, be ready to put the sack. So I stick the rat in my mouth. They put the sack over my head. Now I'm swinging like the rat's attacking my face. And I'm swinging around as I'm doing this. The saliva's going. And they got fake blood coming down the rope. So it's going through the sack, like blood's going through the sack. Well, that's going in my mouth at the same time. And finally, after about 20 seconds of swinging around, I said, man, I can't take this anymore. So I stopped swinging, and then they take the sack off, and I got the rat in my mouth. That's how we shot the scene, if you ever decide to see the movie. But that's something behind the scenes on my movies, But I could talk all night about a lot of those scenes in my movies were, pretty exciting. But I don't know if you have any questions that you'd like to ask me regarding. Yes.
All right, it's going to be asking, what's your favorite Chuck? What's one of your favorite sayings about it?
Oh, my favorite Chuck Norris saying? They wanted to put Chuck Norris on Mount Rushmore, but the granite wasn't tough enough for his spear. Yes.
What was your favorite episode of
Walker, Texas Ranger? My favorite episode was a 2-hour called Lucas.
Yeah.
Lucas, I have to tell you about that movie and that script. When we wrote the script, Lucas, what I do when I was doing Walker, every Saturday, my writers would come into town and we'd sit down and I'd read verbally the screenplay so I could find any loopholes in the script. Well, for those that haven't seen the episode of Lucas, Lucas is about my character Walker breaking down a crack house. And as we go into this crack house, I'm kind of walking around, and I find this closet, open it up, and here's a little boy lying down there, food molded, rat running across. And I pick this boy up, and I take him to the hospital. And the next day, I go to the hospital and check on him. I said, how is he doing? They said, well, he's dehydrated, but he'd be okay, but he has AIDS. And he says, he must have, his mother, he was born with AIDS. And so I go and see the boy, and he says, can you find my mommy for me? I said, I'll find your mom. So I find her, but she's dying. And she says, would you watch my son and take care of him? And I promise her I will. So anyway, she dies. And so anyway, I wind up adopting Lucas. And but the thing is, when I'm reading the screenplay, and as I'm reading it, tears are coming out of my eyes. And I look up, and all my writers are all crying. And I said, man, let me get up and walk around a little bit, man. I got to recompose myself. And so I, finally come back and do it. But that one, of all the movies I've done 23 movies and 23 episodes of Walker. I never had a script affect me the way Lucas did. And I had some great episodes that I take pride in, but that one is the only one that really affected me as emotionally. And then I did one, I wanted to do some faith-based episodes. And again, which I didn't really bring up today, growing up, I was a strong Christian young man. And my mom was a strong Christian woman. She kept us, even though I didn't have a father, my mom kept us, with her faith. Then I get into Hollywood, and then the power and the fame of Hollywood, I put my faith on the back burner. And I thought, fame and fortune and all this stuff here, and it's interesting. And I'll share this with you as well. I didn't plan on it, but I will share it with you. Is that the more famous and more successful I got, the less happy I became. And I never could figure it out. I said, why aren't I happy? I've got all the money I need, all the fame, and everything that goes with all that, and I'm not happy. And I never could figure it out. I thought, well, the more successful I get, I'll get happier. But it never happened. The hole in my heart got bigger and bigger. I never could figure it out. And then I met my wife, a very strong Christian woman, and she brought me back to my faith. And I realized at that time that all the financial success in the world will not bring you happiness. It's the relationships you have with your families, your friends, and enjoying what it is you're doing in your profession. That's important. Because the only way you're going to work hard is enjoying what you're doing. You may have to work on something you don't like doing, but that's a step in the direction of doing what you want to do. And so I got my faith back, and I said, Gina said, why don't you do a faith-based episode of Walker? I said, okay. So I called CBS. I said, I want to do a faith-based episode of Walker. No, we got touched by an angel. We don't need any more faith episodes. I said, well, okay, let me do one. If it's not one of our highest-rated shows of the year, I won't ask you again. They said, all right, you can do one. So I did a movie called The Neighborhood. The Neighborhood is about a little black girl who lived in the ghetto of Dallas. And she's walking home from school one day, and she gets caught up between a gang fight, and she gets shot, critically injured. And they rush her to the hospital. Now, my character goes to the hospital to investigate, and the doctor says, well, she's not going to make it. She's bleeding internally. There's nothing we can do for her. Then miraculously, she's healed. And the doctors are flabbergasted. She says, well, I was on my way to heaven, but an angel stopped me. And the angel says, it's not your time. You have a job to do, and that's to clean up your neighborhood. So the whole story is her going back, clean up chasing the drug dealers out of her neighborhood, and clean up the graffiti and all this stuff. And she has a revival at the end. And then the two gangs come together at the end. And it's the first time Walker became a top 10 show. So, yes, ma'am. Do you have a question?
I do, Mr. Norris. Actually, I was told to come to the microphone so everybody could follow, but I do have a question for you. With all the corrupt congressmen right now, except for probably maybe Ron Paul, could you just elaborate on that?
Elaborate
on Ron Paul and the idea you have?
Well, Ron Paul, I think right now, I don't know if you're Ron Paul supporters or not. But Ron Paul is out there trying to make a difference. And I said to Gina, oh, you don't want me to tell you what I said last. I said, honey, if I had one wish, if someone said, you can have one wish of anything you want. I said, okay, I want to go to Washington. I want to line up in Congress. And I'm going to have Ron Paul, because I know he's honest. And I'm going to say, Ron, as we go down the aisle, you point the ones who are corrupted. The corrupted politicians. And so we walk down the aisle. Here's all politicians lined up down here. We walk down, he points, he says he's corrupted. I grab it and I choke him unconscious. Then I have my black belt drag him over, drag him out of the way. And then the next one I choke him out right on that line, and I keep sticking him into a pile.
In the choke
Pile
pile.
them up. And then the ones that are honest, they stay. And they focus on getting us back on our feet. That was my wish. Yeah.
I just want to know, can you really operate any type of motor vehicle? Like on Walker, Texas Ranger?
Oh, you mean all the trucks? Oh, man,
Helicopters?
yeah, I do, man. I used to race. I used to race cars. I raced off-road for 4 years, and then I used to race the superboats, those big 50-foot things. And I broke the world record from Chicago to Detroit, and I broke the world record from San Francisco to LA. So these are the things I used to love doing because I'm very competitive. But on the Walker, you know, we'd go through about 3 vehicles a year because I was having a lot of fun in those trucks. In fact, I have to tell you, GM didn't last very long. I'm sorry if you have a GM truck, but they said, you're tearing our trucks out. You can't have any more GM trucks. So then we moved to Dodge. And the Dodge trucks did hold up better, you know. But it was an exciting time on Walker to be able to do a lot of the things, and plus keep my martial arts going. You know, I mean, since I wasn't teaching anymore, and being able to do the martial arts in my shows, that was exciting. That's what kept me in shape, that kept me training, and even to this day, even though I'm not doing it, I still train like I was doing a show. And that's what, you know, what keeps me in shape. And in fact, in my book, I have a breakdown of my training regimen that I do, and you know, and a lot of things in the book that deal with health, you know, and diet, and you know, and all this stuff here. But the thing is, that was the last question. But anyway, the thing is, they were going to have books here for you to buy. Unfortunately, they didn't show up. So Borders said, well, we have book plates. And, you know, if you want to sign the book plate, they can break it into Borders. And they can pick up the book when, you know, at Borders. I said, well, if that's what you're going to do, that's what you're going to do it. I don't know. But anyway, I just want to tell you all, I really appreciate you coming today. And for the ones that are graduating or going to graduate from Kent State, I wish you all the very best. You know, and I know you're going to make a difference in this country. You know, we need leaders. We need leaders of integrity and honesty. And I think from what I've been able to, because I've talked to thousands of you. You know, I gave a talk at Liberty University, and I've talked to thousands when I was on the campaign with Mike Huckabee, and I found out what you wanted, and what you stood for, and what you wanted to do with this country besides trying to make a success in the financial world. And I was impressed by your comments, by saying, you know, that we've got to bring our country back, like Ron Paul said, back home. We have downtrodden, we have homeless in our own country, and the thing is, when they want to keep sending money overseas, and the thing that kind of upset me about Barack Obama, he and Biden want to send $50 billion to the United Nations as soon as they get into office for the poor overseas. That sounds fine. But when I was in Korea, and you know, we had hundreds of orphanages in Korea. And so, you know, a lot of us opportunities would sponsor them. Well, America was sending over thousands and thousands of dollars in food, supplies, money, and all this stuff here. 10% went to the orphanages. 90% went into the corrupt politician's pocket. And I'm thinking, all right, has it changed now? So if we send $50 billion to the United Nations, are they going to give all $50 billion to the poor? No. Maybe 10%, maybe $5 billion if we're lucky. $45 billion out of $50 billion is going to go in there into the corrupted politicians' pockets at the United Nations. You know, that's not what we want. We got too much problems at home to be giving it away all over the country, and that's what Ron Paul stands for. You know? Ron Paul talks about it all the time. When he was on Glenn Beck the other night, he talked about it. I mean, we need leadership like Ron Paul. And, you know, and the thing is that if we can get, my feeling, you know, you might not agree with me, but I want John McCain and Sarah Palin in the White House. You know why? Because they'll bring Ron Paul into the White House. You know, they'll bring him on, because Ron Paul and Mike Huckabee are good friends, and they talk a lot. And so I know that if we can get that leadership in the White House, that people like Mike Huckabee and Ron Paul will be a constructive part of rebuilding our country. And you, for the future, will be the one that will rebuild our country. Thank you very much.
USA! USA! USA!